Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Power Man Podcast. My name's Rory Paquette, and I know, I know you know that. But folks, I just like to remind myself about how grateful I am to be sitting in this chair doing what I do. When we made the move to 5 days a week, you folks just absolutely sounded the alarm and came through for us. When we went to 7 days and I thought I was being a little crazy, you guys stepped up even further. If you're not out there doing what you're doing with liking and sharing and listening and everything else, and all of the DMs you folks send in here, then you know what? I can't sit here and do what I'm doing. So I am very grateful. Thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. We just, as this is being recorded, we just put out episode 300. So, kind of a pretty big milestone for this particular podcast. And it's all because of you. So, thank you, folks. Well, if you're a friend of the program, and I know you are, then you know what we got to do. Let's pay some bills. Let me get a sip of my preferred beverage. Oh my gosh, that is good stuff, like always. And you guys know what we're drinking. That's right. It's Freedom Hill Coffee at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Deep, dark, rich, bold, and beautiful. Just like my wife. They brew a mean cup of Joe. It's a fantastic cup of coffee. They do all the right things for all the right reasons. They support veterans, which is one of the biggest reasons why we support them. You all know how important veterans are here to us at the Power Man Podcast. If you have served your country out there, folks, just like the man who we have on as a guest today, we want to thank you and your families for your service. And we love you, and we're glad that you have found a home here with Power Man Podcast. So try out this coffee because they support you as well. Freedom Hill Coffee at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Look them up, check them out. Let me get one more sip of this. Here we go. So I can keep up with this young buck on the other side of the table from me. He's got quite a story, and he has done a lot of really good work in a field that is very close to our hearts. Guess what? Masculinity. Yeah, that's right. Folks, please welcome to the show. Licensed psychotherapist, educator, men's advocate, and a whole host of other things that I know he's going to tell you all about today. Please welcome Timothy Wienecke to the show. Timothy, how you doing, brother?
Oh, great, man. That was a wonderful way to connect with your audience, man. You got a good group of folks here.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And we do, man. We have a great group here. So I'm glad you came on to talk to us today. As we get rolling here, I know we got a lot to talk about. Timothy, tell everybody, who is Timothy Wienecke? What are you about? What's your story, brother?
Sure. So my name's Tim Wienecke. I was an Air Force vet for about 5 years. Not the exciting kind of veteran, I like to say, right? I did intelligence work, which anybody who ever's done it knows it's incredibly boring until it's not. Uh, but what really got me going when I was in service was being an airman. And I started serving around sexual assault violence prevention work. So I was an advocate to start. And then back in around '09, the Air Force was the first branch to really get in trouble for sexual assault and started launching their bystander program. And we don't get enough credit for the military folks, right? That we've generally been ahead of that curve over universities in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
So the military integrated bystander work before most universities in the country. So it was on the front end of that, and it was great. It's my favorite job I ever had. I talked about 3,000 airmen into punching rapists for a living for a while. It was a great gig. Can't beat that. But
Wow.
that's what well, it was funny. So doing the prevention work, I've done it both in uniform and on college campuses, and it's funny the dichotomy of it. So for veteran guys, military guys, it's talking to them about there being a problem. Like, hey man, this is something you should pay attention to. It's bad. And then they're immediately like, okay, so I punch him. No, man, you can't do that. You're gonna go to jail. That's not how this works in a bar. Like, go talk to the bouncer, go talk to somebody else. College kids are like, yeah, we know it's a problem, but we're not getting punched in the face. No, no, you don't have to get punched in the face. You just gotta do these other things. So that
Okay.
was a fun click over. But that's how I got into doing human services work. And so when I got out, I transitioned over into continued doing violence prevention stuff, but also built out at the time the most successful transition program for veterans coming into college. At the time, we took a program with two people helping about 20 or 30 guys to a program with 30 volunteers helping at about 1,000 veterans transition into college campuses
Wow.
every year. And it
Excellent.
was a great time. That was a great time. And then from there, I went and started doing my clinical work. And now the clinical work has been great. So the problem with advocacy work and crisis work is you're generally always seeing people on one of the worst days of their life. And then you're handing them off to the resource, but you never get to see them on a good day of their life, right? You like literally day in and day out, people calling in terrible positions. With the clinical work, it's nice because I get them at the front end of that, but then I get to see them get better. I get to help them get better. I get to help them build the lives they want to build. So it's a lot more sustainable as a career.
Nice. Nice. You unpacked a lot there. Let me go back just for a minute to the bystander work. When
Mhm.
I was reading about this, as you and I were talking about you coming on the show, I started looking into this. I don't want to say I've never heard of that angle, the bystander work side of it, but
Mhm.
it seemed new to me because I don't hear about it much.
Yeah.
There's a ton of focus on men changing their behavior and how they look at things. This is takes it a step further, maybe,
Mhm.
in saying, hey, we have to look out for each other. We have to look out for your
Yeah.
brothers. If someone's getting ready to do something stupid, you need to like jump in.
Yeah.
Where is this something? How'd you get into doing bystander work?
So
Like,
I
what
got
was it about that made you go, "Hey, I want to jump in here and do this"?
Well, I got really lucky. So I got my start. I was in Korea at Osan, and at the time, Osan Air Base had more assaults per person than any other Air Force base in the world,
Hmm,
right? Because it's a perpetrator's dreamland, right? It's a lot of alcohol. It's a year-long post, and first-term airmen are going there. And the important thing to remember about this when we talk about military sexual assault is our country has a sexual assault problem. 1 in 3 women have been assaulted. 1 in 4 men have experienced some kind of assault. We have a problem, right? So the military gets a bad rap because we make the news, but we have a problem as a country. And so that was great for working with individuals. But when I got to England, the Air Force launched its bystander program. And since I was at a small base, I got sent TDY or got to go travel for training from the PhDs that developed out the program. And I volunteered for it, but I didn't know what I was getting into and how wonderful it would be. And essentially, the idea behind bystander training is every violent crime, like 60% of them, happen in front of some kind of witness. Right. So anybody who's ever done any kind of CPR training, you get a similar kind of thing where if you're the person taking control of a crisis situation, the first thing you do is you look at somebody you can see and you point them out and say, hey, call 911. Because otherwise, what happens is all the people standing around just watch the show. Right. Because that's our natural inclination. Oh, somebody's
yeah,
handling it. I wonder what's going to happen.
sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Same kind of things happens in these moments. You'll be at a bar, you'll be somewhere where something could happen, and you'll see somebody getting out of hand. You'll see somebody that's in a vulnerable position. And without a cue for yourself to know what to do next or to have an idea of what to do, most of us just stand there and watch. And it's not because we're bad people. It's not because there's something wrong with us. It's because that's our instinct, right? We just want to like observe the world and engage. And if we don't know them, hey, we don't know them. I hope things go okay. And so just by training people to say, hey, you can do something in these moments, if that was your sister, if that was your brother, wouldn't you want somebody to do something? It doesn't matter that they're drunk. It doesn't matter that they do these things. Wouldn't you want your neighbor to say something to somebody you care about or help somebody that you care about in a vulnerable position? And most people can get behind that.
Hmm. I understand the idea in terms of encouraging it and
Mhm.
why we want to encourage it. I also am kind of seeing some of the other side of it, like, guys who don't want to get involved.
Yeah.
Um, and I know that you put it out there as a nonviolent thing, but
Mhm.
I bartended for a long time back when I was younger. I bounced actually when I was younger.
Yeah.
So I've seen a lot of this stuff unfortunately firsthand, and I know that
Yeah.
when you have a guy and I'm just using this as a stereotype, but
Sure.
guys bringing home a girl's way too drunk, and you get a little
Mhm.
concerned. You get in that guy's way, it's going to turn violent.
It
Like,
can. Absolutely.
so do you talk about how to de-escalate that? I mean, is that part of the
Yes.
training? Like, here's
Yeah.
how you confront and how you stop, and I'm just curious about that part of it.
So a lot of it is reading the situation as to whether you should be the one to confront or you should be the one to bring it to somebody else's attention.
You start there. Okay, that's interesting. All right.
Yeah. So like I'm a 6'1", 200 pound guy. And so if I'm at a bar and I see something going out of hand, if I walk up to that guy, all of a sudden we get into ape space, right?
Hmm.
Where that guy is going to get defensive of like territorial nonsense that we do because we're mammals, right? This happens.
Sure.
But if I'm out, I'm probably out with some women that I know. And so if I look at my female friend, I'm like, hey, can you go check on her? I'm right here. Like if he gets out of hand, I'm right here, but can you go check on her?
Hmm.
That that doesn't escalate the same way, right? Or I go to you as the bartender. Hey, she seems to be overserved and he looks like he's taking her out. Is anybody doing anything about that? And then the
Hmm.
bouncer might get involved, right? Somebody who's in a bit of a place of authority that's also got some training, right? Like just because I'm a big guy doesn't mean I want to go around in bars, right? I
Right.
like my teeth where they are.
Sure. Things never go the way you think they're going to go either.
Ever not a once.
No. So, no, I got you though. I can appreciate this.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Or if, like a lot of times you'll clock, at least for me, right? I really like observing people. And I think a lot of people when they're out do, right? We like looking at the room, we like seeing what's going on.
Yeah.
You almost always know who that person showed up with or who else they've been talking to. So even if you don't approach the couple directly, you can go to her friend and be like, "Hey, is she okay? Does she know him? That seems a little out of hand."
Okay.
And
Got
so
it.
it's that simple. Like I think a lot of us, because of exactly what you're talking about, right? Most guys, when we think about these things, they're like, "Look, I don't know who's involved. I don't want to get in a fight. I don't want this to escalate. I'm not going to jail because somebody had too much to drink at a bar."
Right. Right.
And it doesn't need to be what it is.
Do you advocate going so far as like, calling the cops or, bringing in other outside authorities to that situation?
Well, I think it all depends on the situation, but absolutely.
Okay. All
Right.
right.
Like if it
Excellent.
escalates far enough, of course, that's their job. That's why we love our people in uniform, right? They show up and
Right.
handle the hard things.
Awesome. Okay. Cool. The do you trying to think of a good way to ask this question. In the old days,
Back in
and
the long, long ago.
I'm an older guy, so in the old days, there's a lot of different ways to handle the situation. Everything you're saying is incredibly helpful to someone who wants to handle the situation, but there are some parameters that were given,
Mhm.
in that you didn't have to worry about what gender the person was, or what color they were, or what religion they are, or anything else. Do you run into issues with that in terms of how you counsel people?
So we go crazy by culture,
Hmm.
right? The best example I have of this is how Americans and Brits exhibit schizophrenia. So Americans, when we get schizophrenia bad enough, we get violent, paranoid, and start to think that like God is talking to us and we should hurt people, right? The Brits, if they go too far, they go catatonic and completely escape the real world into the visions. And the reason for that is the Brits are all about that, don't make a scene, stiff upper lip, hold it together, right? And so if you're counseling somebody and you're not bringing in their cultural context, what's happening to them, you're not doing the job very well. It's a big part of why all the data says that if you go into counseling, sitting across from a counselor that looks like you tends to go better.
Hmm.
So let's say that I'm working with a 22-year-old guy, and he's 22 and he's a walking hard on, right? And he's struggling with what to do with that. Do you think he'd rather talk to me or a 40-year-old woman?
Oh, you, I'm assume.
Usually,
Yeah.
right? Because I remember, right? I get the urges, I get what that feels like, and it's
Right.
a lot easier to talk to me about that. So let's say that I'm working with a black guy and he wants to talk about how he feels walking around the streets with the police. I'm going to be a little harder for him to talk to than another black guy, right?
Right.
And so I need to have training on how to bridge those where I can and also have other clinicians that are in those roles to call when I need to say, hey, I've got this kind of person in here. They're struggling with this. Here's what I'm doing. Am I doing it right? I think the big problem with counseling as a whole is it's a very isolated field, right? With ministry, you're generally part of a team, and there's usually a lot more community talk, right? Because ministry is about building community.
Hmm.
For individual clinicians, our whole world is the individual in front of us at that time, which is powerful and a needed dynamic. But it means that if we're not careful in the long term of our career and we're not consulting and we're not doing the things that we need to really stay ahead of our field, what ends up happening is my patients can't critique my work. They don't know my work. They can say whether they feel safe, they can say whether they feel better, they can say whether they like me, but they can't say whether I'm doing good therapy or not. And so we need that accountability within the profession with each other. And some of it's because of that culture we were just talking about, right? Like I get it all the time. I'm not religious. Like I'm agnostic. I don't have the ego to call who's up there doing things. I just know there's somebody, right? And so every now and then I'll get a Christian, I'll get a Jewish guy, I'll get a Muslim guy, and their faith is really important to them. And so that's something I have to broach and address with that. And it also means I'm usually consulting with a chaplain. If faith is going to be important, getting the right frame for them, getting them to the right resource. Like I can't talk to you about God. I can talk to you about your values. I can talk to you about your behavior. I can talk to you about what you want in the world and who you want it with. But if faith is going to be a cornerstone to that, let's get you some support in faith as well.
Interesting. All right. So it is something that you take into account, obviously.
Yeah,
It's a
have
very,
to.
very big component. I appreciate that.
Well, and it's what I teach.
Yeah.
So I
Okay.
just, like we were talking about before, I just presented at the state conference on masculine issues, and 4 to 5 of my field are women. And so the whole presentation was on how to broach some of these things as non-men and working with men. There's a big reason why most men are more drawn to ministry or coaching than counseling, and it's just primarily because our field is very feminine.
Yeah. Yeah. I've never seen that connection with the female therapist trying to talk to the male patient. It's just always sort of baffled me. Not that there's a problem with that, based on that. It's just, for me, it was always hard to try to relate, to think that way.
Hmm.
And that's what I hear resoundingly from guys who are
Hmm.
in groups and things like that is that, they can't even imagine doing that. But by the same token, I've heard people say, well, then it's kind of like dialoguing with your wife, but without having a dialogue with your wife.
Hmm. Yeah, there's pros and cons, right? So,
Yeah.
what I generally recommend to people is if you've never done counseling before, find someone like you for their first run at it.
Okay.
Do a phone screen, make sure that you get on the phone with them before you ever go into a room and say, can I respect this person? Do I feel heard? Do I feel like they respect me and they're hearing me? Before you ever go into a room, call 1 or 2 guys, then go in. It's going to give you the best chance of good outcomes.
Nice.
Most of us, though, that do therapy come in and out of therapy over the course of our lifetime. Like once it works during one hard thing, why wouldn't you go back the next hard thing? And there's always another hard thing,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
And so what I tell my patients to do is when we kind of come to the end of our run and our work, right? We get them to where they want to be. They're doing okay. They don't need to be paying me 180 hour anymore. It's time for them to go and be in the world. What I always tell them is I'm here. You can come back to me, but I'd really recommend you go to a female clinician the next time. Take what we've learned here, take the safety you found in therapy, and go see what comes up reflecting on somebody that doesn't look like you.
Hmm. Now that's interesting to me because if I'm your patient and I'm
Hmm.
going through a round with you, like you just said,
Hmm.
and we kind of reach the end and you're like, hey, you're doing okay. You're going to be all right. We've kind of reached the end of what we're going to do together. That worked, so to speak, right? I
Hmm.
mean, if
Yeah.
we're ending it and
Yeah.
and that's good, then it worked. So then the recommendation is to go do something different because I think the average guy is going to, say, hey, if it's not broke, don't fix it. We're just talking about that in the pre-interview, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, but I mean, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Why wouldn't I want to go back to the guy who fixed me last time? Why would I want to go try a new person? So your answer to that would be what?
Depends on the issue. So, like you said, let's say that the guy's coming in because let's say I get a guy when he's a new dad, right? And he's freaking out about being a new dad. These are my favorite patients, by the way. There's nobody more motivated than a new dad to change some things and do some things better, right?
Right on.
But we get the kid, we get him through the kid getting into elementary school, them and their wife reconnect after that 4 year point. That's always so hard, right? That like living in the mess of a diaper
Mm,
until you can reconnect afterwards. But we get them
right.
through all that and they're doing good. And they're like, okay, man, I'm feeling good. Me and my wife are good. Me and my kid are good. The kid's in school. We did good. Great. They're probably going to need some help when their kid gets into high school or graduates. That empty nester transition is huge. And a
Oh,
lot of couples
yeah.
don't make the turn, right? Because all of a sudden you're looking at each other and you're like, do I even like you now that the kid's not around? Like we haven't talked in however long. And so let's say that they're working on how to like connect and deal with their wife. It might be more helpful to talk to a woman than me about how to connect with their wife.
Hmm,
Let's say that they come in though and they're talking about some kind of trauma situation where maybe they're a responder and the stack of trauma has added up again and it's time to go do some work again. They can come back to me and I'll do the good work with them, right? But it might get to some different parts of it if they do it with a woman just from the reflection. Really, it goes better for guys when they come earlier. The problem with most guys in therapy is they wait until their life is a bonfire. They call
yeah.
me, hey man, she left. Can you help me
Right.
get her back? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know her, but come on in. Let's talk about what's happening with you.
Right.
As opposed to my marriage isn't the way that I want it to. Can you help me?
Right. Yeah, I can absolutely see that. I mean, I've heard that type of thing. Definitely should have gone earlier, waited till it was too late, so on and so forth. That's just really interesting what you're bringing up. I appreciate you sharing all that because we don't
Hmm.
normally get that on the show for our guys, those sorts of differing perspectives. So I
Yeah,
absolutely appreciate what you're bringing to the show today. If we can change gears a little bit, when you
absolutely.
were talking in your intro, you mentioned the veteran transitioning. I have a
Hmm.
lot of veterans on this show,
Yeah.
and I get the opportunity and the privilege to talk to these guys a lot. In our groups, they're very open about some of the things they're dealing with, and I have heard over and over and over that it's like, hey, I give 4, 8, 12 years of my life to the service and they give me 2 weeks to transaction out. And it just
Hmm.
doesn't quite work. And that's one of the biggest issues that I hear
Hmm.
from veterans. This is something that you work with.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because it's been an issue since Rome. So you figure, right? Like that's how Caesar came to power, is there was a bunch of disgruntled vets after all the wars that
Yeah,
he was able to wrangle up and go take over with. So the idea that we do well as a species with an army, transitioning former warriors into civilian life, it's hard.
right.
So sometimes it's just worth saying that that's hard, right? It's complicated, it's tricky. The skill set that carries you forward in your service is going to be valuable in other places in your life, but it can't be the same. Absolutely can't be the same. You don't
Yeah,
lead a team at a Kinko's the same way that you lead a combat operations team.
right,
And if you
right.
try, it goes tragically bad.
Yeah, that's something I know a lot of these guys have had as feedback is
Mhm.
they're way too intense,
Mhm.
when they come back because they still want to go out and give their all. They want to do their best. I mean, these are guys who are used to the idea that if I don't, do my best and give my all every single minute of every single day, I may not come home.
Yeah.
So then you put them in a working, situation, some sort of, professional corporate situation, even if they're leaders. It's leaders of, mentally. You're
So
not
what
trying to take
I
a hill.
yeah. Well, what I tend to see is it goes one of two ways as you try to figure out your equilibrium with it. So in the military, the reason for me anyway, the reason why you push so hard when I was working and most of the guys I work with, it's not because you're worried about not coming home for most of us. It's because we know that no matter what we do, somebody isn't coming home. And we want to know damn sure that it wasn't because we missed something or didn't do our job the way we're supposed to.
I can appreciate that. Yeah, 100%. Right.
And the military needs to operate with that in mind, right? It's incredibly important mission first mentality. There's almost no other job where it should be like that.
Hmm.
Maybe first response, right? But even then, you go home, right? And so what ends up happening is that intensity feels good, right? I like to equate it to the feeling of righteousness you get every now and then when somebody like when you're like you're right and somebody else is wrong and you feel that like just powerful, right? That's what service feels like a lot of times. But in any other aspect of your life, it's not going to be that way. And so there's guys that come out and they try to stay there because that feeling feels good, knowing that they're like all in, all cylinders for something feels wonderful. But when the energy isn't matched by the people around you, you start to overburden, right? When everybody isn't operating at that level, you start to overperform and you burn out. On the other end, the idea of like the common mantra for a lot of guys is, well, no one's dying, right? This report, no one's dying for. And so they end up kind of oscillating while they figure out their balance between this like super up here from the very end and matter down here. And I think a big part of it is there's this old story about a president on an aircraft carrier that illustrates the point really well. So aircraft carriers are flying cities, right? There's a few thousand people and a president's touring and he comes across the mailboy. And the mailboy is the lowest ranked person on the ship. And he says, young man, tell me what you do. He's like, well, sir, I've got the most important job on the ship. He's like, oh, yeah, tell me about that. He's like, well, if I don't deliver this, we don't get food. If I don't deliver this, then we don't get fuel. If I don't deliver this, we don't have the munitions we need. I have the most important job on the ship, sir. The military is profoundly good at making sure you feel connected to a greater purpose. Most companies cannot be and are not.
Hmm.
They're about making a dollar.
Yeah.
And that's a perfectly fine thing, right? Capitalism has a lot of great things to it, but purpose is generally not one of them.
Love the
And
way
so
you broke
that's
that down.
where,
That's huge.
yeah,
Yeah, that is huge. Another thing that I've heard from guys, if you don't mind me throwing another question at you here
no, go
about
for it.
this, is the idea that it is kind of all for one, one for all when you're out there. You
Hmm.
are just as worried about the guy next to you as you're worried about yourself.
Hmm.
And as soon as you get into most business, corporate, any type of culture, it's every man for himself, and nobody cares about the guy next to him at all. And if you can screw over the guy next to you to get ahead, you're gonna. And when guys leave the military and get into that, there's a big sense of betrayal
Hmm.
when they get into that
Yeah.
situation. Are there any, I don't know, steps they can take to sort of repair themselves for that, or maybe deal with that, process that?
Yeah. So the big thing is the way that I like to approach it is through values, right? If you know what you value, you can find work that aligns with your value set. And so some guys, let's say that you want to go into business sales. Business sales is some of the most cutthroat work that you can get into,
Right.
right? And some guys really like that. They want to compete, they want to win, they want to know they're the best in their room. And if you're that guy, great, go do that. It's fine. And I'll help you not be a jerk to the people while you do it and still win, right? Come to therapy. You don't need to be as hard as you're being in it, but that's great. If you like that and that competitiveness, that drive is part of your value set and you need it there, great, go do that work. But if you're not that guy, maybe it's okay that you're a manager at a Kinko's and your purpose isn't from your job. Like you're providing for your family and that job doesn't take as much from you. So then you can go volunteer. You can go be part of the church. You can go be your kid's soccer coach.
Hmm.
You can go do whatever other things that purpose comes through. And then you can also be a boss at a job like that where you're just trying to help people be good at what they do and move into their life the way that they want to move. Right? You're still
Nice.
managing people, you're still leading a team, you're still helping them. It's just not to the level that you did in the military.
Hmm.
It ends up taking probably like I'd say about at least three different roles to replace the space the uniform leaves behind.
Wow. That's huge, but that also sounds correct to me. It
Hmm.
sounds like that feels right
Hmm.
from everything that I talk to these guys about. I appreciate you, diving in on that. Thank you for fielding the question. Now, you've done this type of work. You've done a lot of this stuff.
Hmm.
What you're doing now, you're working with first responders, businesses, this type of thing. Tell everybody what it is you're doing now and why and what it is.
Sure. So after 10 years of doing clinical work with guys in response, veterans, and just men in general, it was really funny what happened. When I opened up the practice, I expected to be all uniforms that came in, right? Because I'm one of like five guys in Denver that's a former uniform that doesn't work at the VA,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
Turns out I got a lot of business guys, a lot of C-suite guys. They come in, they're like, "You're a sergeant, you'll tell me what to do. Let's go." And I'm like, "Well, that's not therapy, man, but come on in, let's work it out." Uh, and so it's really broadened the impact, right? So like I was saying earlier around the work around interpersonal violence and catching people on a bad day, if I can work with leadership and I can work with guys that are in positions to make decisions, everything that they do now touches 1,000 people. And so while I've got my 10,000 hours of clinical work now, right? I've been doing it the 10 years and I'm pretty good at it. It's nice to get in front of people and help organizations and different groups come up with better ways to be in their masculinity and how to bring that forward into the workplace that isn't competitive with other things. I think the big problem that I have that I see now is I was on the front end of Me Too. I was usually the only cis hetero guy in that room while Me Too was kicking off. And at the time, I was really excited about it, to be honest. Like, I would hear all these horror stories about these monsters doing horrible things and getting away with it. And it was so excited to see some accountability come in. But we've really polarized things now, where the conversation is always either gender's a myth, doesn't exist, and masculinity is toxic, or the only way to be a man is to be John Wayne, which is also trash, right? And so the concept of bringing masculinity in, owning your masculinity, accepting that men have problems, and that so do women, so do non binary folks, and that the people causing our problems tend to be men in power. And that's where the miss is, right? It's really hard to look at a mechanic white guy and say, man, he's having a really hard time when you see the people making the calls that are hurting us so badly be a white guy in a suit coming from family money. And so a big part of my work is convincing people that, hey, just because we've all got our things that we have privilege around doesn't mean that we don't have problems and doesn't mean that our problems need to be in competition with each other. If we help that mechanic do better, then his family gets better. He gets to be a better dad. His kids are going to do better. If we can just help people with what they need, the world goes smoother. And so that's what I try to bring in. Depending on the organization and the training they're looking for, I'll go in and we'll talk about these issues. We'll talk about communication. We'll talk about, I know DEI is a pretty rough catchphrase, but I do it pretty well. right? The way to do DEI well is the simple frame of most Christians, which is, can you be a good neighbor? They're not living in your normal. They're your neighbor. How do you learn enough about them to be a good neighbor? That's it. Doesn't need to be more complicated than that.
Interesting. I respect what you're trying to do. I would imagine it's hard to do what you're doing the way you're doing it because, I mean, from where I'm sitting, listening to what you're saying, you are really walking a fine line, it sounds like.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've really just been stepping into this for the last year or two. So I've got about a dozen different allyship awards from different social justice organizations. And I've got 10 years of working with guys specifically. And so there aren't that many people with that kind of balance of experience to come forward and have credibility on both ends. My service, even though it wasn't the exciting veteran service, still gives me enough masculine credibility that most guys are open to hearing me. And my allyship awards means that the non-binary person who's been hurt by men over and over and over again will pause enough to hear me a little bit. And so I do have to be artful in how I talk about these things, but I've been doing that for 20 years. So I do it okay. Ironically, I just presented at the state conference on masculinity issues. The only person that gave me a problem was another guy in the room. It wasn't one of the women.
I'm not really surprised.
Yeah. He was a
Yeah.
supervisee of a colleague of mine that I really like. So I was pretty pissed.
Okay. All right. Interesting. Because the way you talk about masculinity too, I mean, there's a lot of buttons,
Mhm.
there's a lot of, I'm just trying to think of a better word than buttons, but I mean, that really is it,
Mhm.
sort of triggers. There's the word I was looking for. I don't use that word.
That's a
So
loaded word. Yeah.
that's a loaded word. But there are those triggers because everybody can be triggered by something,
Yeah,
So I'm
absolutely.
just like, hey, um, but there are a lot of triggers to people in the masculinity movement hearing a lot of the things that you're talking about.
Mhm.
So how do you walk that? I mean, it's almost like you're a guy without a camp, which is, I mean, I would think where everybody would
Oh,
love to be.
no, I disagree entirely. So my early career, I did a lot of what's called white knighting. Like all those allyship awards I got in 2000, 2010 was because I was the only white guy allowed and showing up in a room for a problem that wasn't mine.
Hmm.
Right. So I helped found an LGBTQ center on a college campus that was the first one in that in Denver in 2002. Right. I'm not gay. I just like my neighbors having safe places to be. Right. I saw they needed a space. I saw they needed it, went and fought for it. Just like any NCO, right? Like it's not a hard thing for military guys to get. You see a problem, you fix it. The problem is that when I was doing it that way, these aren't my issues. And so inevitably I would push and fix something to the extent that I could, right? But then I'd have to leave. It's not my community. And so now in the last 10 years, speaking on behalf of men, speaking for men, getting out there and helping people see the struggles that we're having and helping men be better, I absolutely have a camp. It's just my camp doesn't have to be in war with anybody else.
Hmm. What do you consider your camp to be?
Men. Men are having a hard time right now. So feminism's promise was that everyone would get a choice. I think a lot about my dad and my grandfather on this. Men in my family love children. They really do. My dad was this crusty old biker. Uh, the FBI interviewing for my clearance had a lot of fun because he's a like drug dealing biker, right? And he looks like one when before he passed. He was crusty and old and had no patience for most people. But when a little kid would come into a restaurant, my father was there. They'd walk up to him and he'd light up and he'd freak out the parents because he's like, "Oh, that's a really great dress. How are you?" Right? And my grandfather was fairly similar. He was a stoic German man. And he wasn't my father's dad. My dad told a story about how for 8 years of his childhood, he only got a full day with his dad on Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Wow.
And I thought he was lying, right? Because we like a good story. I don't know if you can tell by how I talk. We like a good story. We're not going to let the truth get in the way of one. But I was lucky as a teenager, I got to sit down with my grandfather and I asked about it. And he's like, "Yeah, that's true. I did that so you never have to." And what kills me is we put the provider role up so high that we lost dad. And so my father and my grandfather didn't get to be around to raise their sons. Not because they didn't love us, not because they weren't good dads, but because at that time, That wasn't how you did it. You went to work, you provided for your family, and you shut up.
Yeah.
That's garbage. There's absolutely no reason to do that anymore, especially with a two-income family now. And so while women are struggling with this idea that they have to be good at everything, right? Now that they can do everything, they have to be good at everything. And if they're not good at everything, they're a terrible woman. Men are just starting now to recognize we have a choice. That we can be, yes, we can have careers. Yes, being a provider is a perfectly valid role. It just can't be our only role. That's a thin life. It's a miserable life. What are you providing for? How are you connecting to recharge your battery for the people you're providing with? How are you partnering with your partner to be good parents?
Hmm. Wow. Okay. All right. So,
A
so men and I
little bit
mean,
of a
I'm just taking
soapbox.
it. No, I'm just giving you your time, brother. You don't have any trouble expressing yourself, and that's
No,
very
sir.
refreshing in my seat. So I can just sit back and be like, "All right, Tim, what do you think?" So, no, but a lot of, I mean, you can tell how much you believe in your thoughts and your stances and your opinions here. So, I respect that. That's great that you have that kind of emotion. The worst thing in the world is when people are like, whatever. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
That's tough. That's tougher in
Yeah.
my
I
world.
think it's tougher all across. I mean, I think the big problem that we have is America's biggest strength, in my not so humble opinion, is how diverse we are. We have the best people from all over the world that come here. And they do well here because there's opportunity for that. And it's why we can do so many different things well. And the minute that we start thinking that everybody has to be the same, we're hamstringing ourselves as a country. It's the one thing that we have that nobody else has. And so we're the most individualistic country in the world, right? That's got some good things. It's why we're so good at business. It's why we made it to the moon. It means it's also why we did COVID really badly, right? It's okay to be individualistic. It's okay that your normal isn't somebody else's normal. It's just a matter of making empowered choices for your life based on your values while leaving room for other people to do the same. And all of a sudden, we can be neighbors, we can move the ball, things get better. What's happening lately and what's got me so angry about it all is everybody's talking to everybody like it's their fault instead of how do we get together for a solution.
Hmm. Interesting perspective. Okay. The a very popular movement, especially lately. I mean, it's gained a lot of ground in the last few years in our circles. Has been the Stoic movement. Stoicism and
Yeah.
whatnot. I can probably guess, but I'm gonna ask anyway. What's your thought on Stoicism as a movement, as a method of dealing with life for guys?
So I think if it's capital S Stoicism, like the Roman philosophy, it's
Mhm.
fantastic. It's Western mindfulness. That's all it is. Pay attention to what's happening to yourself, listen to your emotions to get some direction, and then take action where you can impact your life. Capital S Stoicism is not feeling things. It is acknowledging the feeling and taking the correct action. The problem with the movement largely is that everybody thinks they need to be John Wayne, where I don't express emotion, I don't name emotion, I just do. And you're missing a third of yourself when you do it that way. You can be emotional, you just can't be emotionally driven. You need your emotions. That they're a gas tank. It's why I'm here talking about this. It's why you started the podcast. Your emotion about what you do is why your listeners resonate and keep listening because they hear in your voice, they see on your face that you care about what you're talking about. So, like the Daily Stoic is probably the best resource if you're looking for like a podcast on stoicism and want to follow that. He's great and he talks about it very well. The problem is so many people do it so badly, where it's just be stony and do what you need to do and shut up. Men
Sure.
suffer. No, if you want to go through pain, pain's great. Anything worth doing has some pain between you and it most of the time. But pain without purpose is just suffering. There's no reason to not feel what you're feeling and to share it with the people that you're close with. A colleague of mine frames it the best way I've ever heard it. He's got me by 10 years at the job and he's a little younger than me, which makes me mad because he's better at it than me. Our job is to help convince guys they don't have to hold it together all the time, but they have to hold it together most of the time. And the problem with the way that a lot of the Stoicism talk goes is that you can't ever be emotional. You can't ever be at a point where people can see that you need their support and that you're partnered with people. You can't ever let other men that you trust see your struggles and help you with them. That's nonsense.
Hmm. Interesting. Again, I appreciate the perspective.
Hmm.
All right. You've been doing this work for a long time.
But
And recently, fairly recently, you decided to move some of this over into a podcast format. So, I mean, as a podcaster and one who does this, as a living, I'm always curious.
yeah.
What made you want to move into a podcast, and what do you cover in the podcast, and what should people expect if they go check this out after they hear you today?
So for me, it's the big thing was the growing discomfort with how Me Too was playing out. And I couldn't articulate it, right? The toxic masculinity conversation. When it first came out, like I said, I was excited. There were a lot of toxic things going on. It made sense. But then as time went by, I got more and more uncomfortable and I couldn't articulate what to do about it. And then Richard Reeves put out his book, Of Men and Boys. And between him, Scott Galloway, guys like you talking about men's issues in ways that aren't tearing down other people, all of a sudden there's room for a more nuanced discussion around masculinity in America and what guys need. And that really helped me find my voice. I've been doing education. I've been a professor for what, 10 years now. I taught in the military, but I never knew how to frame these things. And so now that the movement's happening where more and more guys are talking about, yeah, like the world has problems, and yes, powerful men are usually at the top of those problems. Most men are not powerful men at the top of the problems and they're struggling. Like, what do we do about this? And so the podcast is largely an exploration of that. I'm really tired of these polar conversations where it's all everybody telling somebody else that they're wrong and how they're doing it instead of being curious about what they're doing. And so every week I have on an expert in some aspect of our country to talk about the masculine parts of that aspect. And it's been really, really wonderful. And it's helping me clarify a lot of the thoughts and education I want to have. I mean, you know this probably better than anybody, right? You have good conversations with smart people, you get smarter.
For sure. 100%.
And
Yeah.
so it's been a lot of fun to share. So far, my favorite episode we've done was episode 14. I had a Black Lives Matter expert come on, and he's an advocate and author, and he's a great guy, Martin. And I live in Denver. Okay. I have one black friend, right? He has the conversation about like black guys and white guys a lot. He doesn't need to have another one with me, right? He's got a lot of white friends he's trying to carry that water for. So the whole purpose of the interview was sitting down with Martin to talk about like, hey, if I had a black friend, these are the things I'd want to know. And they're hard, where I live, that's just not really, that's not a thing. In the military, like I think a lot of the veterans will get this, right? In the military, you're around everybody. It's an incredibly diverse space. And then you get out and you go home and you go back to your town and you look around and everybody looks like you. And you kind of start to miss that perspective that you used to be able to have those conversations with, right? And so that conversation I really felt like filled that space. I was really proud of it. It's something that I would have wanted to hear to figure out how to be a better neighbor, right? That's all it is. How do we be a better neighbor to each other? How do we be good to each other? And how do we be seen for the men that we want to see and the values we hold, as opposed to be seen as the people that are hurting people?
Nice. I had a chance to listen to a bunch of the stuff on your podcast. You do tackle issues like that, that
Mhm.
are, again, triggering, button pressing,
Mhm.
so to speak. You do it very thoughtfully, and you've got some very interesting guests on there. What is again, the overall goal of the podcast then?
The overall goal is to give guys some tools and some normalizing stories about what's happening to them and to help people who love men understand what's happening to us better. The
Nice.
big thing is I've been doing this long enough now that I say no to a lot of clients, right? I'm pretty full. There aren't many clinicians like me. And so in my mind, there's a guy between 25 and 45 that either can't get to therapy or has had a bad experience and doesn't want to go to therapy, but needs some things. He needs to hear some stories and he needs to hear some tools. And so every episode, I aim to do that. And if even one guy gets helped per episode, that's worth it.
Nice. That's a great way to go into podcasting. Yeah, absolutely. I've said those same words about if you can just help one person, then it's worth sitting there and talking into the mic. So
Mhm.
good for you. Good for you. How have you enjoyed podcasting so far? Are you taken to it, or are you like, ugh,
So I love the conversation. I like the interview. Like as you can tell, I'm a talker. So learning how to interview has been kind of tricky. Um, I really, really like the conversations. I like the frame out. I like the information. I'm a lot happier with it now that I'm paying an editor.
Ah, Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I got to, I think like most people, right? I can get to 70% good at something pretty quickly. But then the effort it takes to get from 70 to professional is just more than I'd want to do. I'd rather learn how to interview well. I'd rather learn how to speak well. I'd rather learn how to sound like you on the mic, man. You are fantastic. I've learned so much just from being here with you.
Thanks for that. I appreciate it.
It's almost like you've done 300 episodes or something.
I have just on this podcast. So I appreciate that, though. Thank you for that. I'm glad to hear you're enjoying it. It's a good podcast, and so I recommend it to folks if you want to take a look, take a listen. Um, Let me do this. I didn't warn you that I do this, but hey, I do this pretty much at the end of all of our episodes, and that is I kind of like to give you the floor for a minute. You're pretty quick on your feet, though, so I don't think I'm sandbagging you with anything here.
Mhm.
But what I really like to do is to kind of put it to you like this: is say, hey, I want to give you the floor for the last minute or two,
Mhm.
and in that, is there anything that I didn't ask you? Is there
Oh.
anything that maybe we talked about that you want to double down on? A
Mhm.
parting thought, a nugget, anything like that you want to leave with the audience. And especially on the, hey, if there's something I missed or something that you really want to make sure you get through to the folks, how would you like to kind of wrap things up? I'll give you the floor for the last minute or two
Nice.
and see what you got. Go for it, Timothy.
I think the best way to be a good neighbor to the people around you and be a good man in the world is to be curious more than you are invested in what's normal. And I think when so many guys feel under attack, it's really hard to be curious. When you feel attacked, you get defensive, you get hard, and you stop being curious about your neighbors. And that makes for a really lonely world. So I hope more of your guys can put down that stuff. They can be strong enough to not be defensive, meaning I can take a hit if I need to be curious about what's coming.
Mhm.
So I can be a good neighbor. And I think if more of us did that, our country wouldn't be heading in the way it's heading, and we'd all be a lot happier. And so if you're looking for ways to do that, if you're looking for insights on how to be a little bit more curious about the world, curious about your masculinity, come check out AmericanMasculinity.com. The podcast is pretty good. And keep listening to men like Rory talk to good people about how to be good people.
Appreciate that. Great wrap up. And you mentioned some contact info. So how do people
Mhm.
reach you? Is it just the website or is there anything else you
That's
want to
probably
throw
the
out?
easiest. I'll give you a link tree that'll link to all the different tools and counseling and everything that I have. But AmericanMasculinity.com is probably the easiest way to find me
Perfect.
and the
That'll be in
easiest
the
one to
show
remember.
notes.
I
Yeah.
can't believe I got that title, by the way.
I- Honestly, I mean, you would have thought that would have been picked up by somebody already,
Right?
but nope. There you go. I thought the same thing when I looked it up, and it was the only one that came up that way. And I went, "Wow, really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm
Found
winning.
found you pretty quick." I was like, "Well, all right." No, I hear you. All right, so we'll have that in the show notes. Any other contact info you want to give me will definitely be in the show notes. And listen, Timothy, I appreciate you coming on. It's very insightful conversation, very open, very honest, and I really do appreciate everything you brought today to just kind of provoke some thought, with folks. I appreciate you coming on.
I'm happy to, man. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. Folks, that's been another just absolutely fantastic episode of the Power of Man podcast. And, the reason we have such powerful men like this come on with such powerful messages is because we are absolutely aligned in trying to help you regain your power, become a better provider, better protector, better leader tomorrow than you are today, better father, better husband, a better man tomorrow than you are today. And the reason that we want that for you is because you matter. It's because you have value. And it's because you're worth it. And at some point, you just have to believe it. Until next time.